And so pleasure just means to sort of enjoy something, and you can define it different ways. One would be sort of the absence of pain, that would be pleasure. Something that takes away pain or something that pulls you in the opposite direction of pain. The more of that you have, the more pleasure you have, the less pain you have. Therefore, that would be a good. I'm not sure if this is Epicurus's version of pleasure. I think he might have included virtue in it too. I don't know, but in any case, that's one way of defining it. Another way of defining it would be something like um, just something which brings you what we might think of as like immediate happiness, or like the good feelings that you get, um, short-term joy or something like that. It's like or like sensory joy. That might be another way to think about it. It's like the joy you can get from eating a steak, from drinking alcohol, from smoking some different types of drugs, from from having fun with your friends, from playing a game like a video game, from listening to music, from listening to sort of, let's say, dance music and dancing, like that. It's like immediate good, immediate good, happy feelings like that. That's pleasure, basically. That's pleasure. Okay. Um, being intimate with a woman, or being intimate with someone like that, all those type of things, that's like pleasure, basically. Now the classic conversation around pleasure uh has always been tied to the idea that pleasure is it's short term. It doesn't last for very long. Yet pleasure is, in other words, this sort of immediate, these things like eating a steak or so on, drinking alcohol and all that. It's like it's always been looked at in the term in the frame of that it lasts like a short amount of time, and then it's gone. And also classically speaking, so there's another concept, okay, which is called hedonism, which is the idea that basically you should just live to pursue immediate pleasure, and that there's no other bigger meaning to life beyond just sort of the pursuit of immediate pleasure, which is not the same as, I would argue, my in my limited understanding of the Greeks, but it's not the same as what Epicurus would talked about when he talked about pleasure, because for him, it's funny, I actually have it here on my desk. I've got the essential Epicurus here. But in any case, and then I'm not trying to show off here, but then I've got Aristotle here. Yeah. But in any case, for Epicurus and for the Greeks, the understanding of pleasure also included the idea of virtue, of doing good, of being a good person or having good character. Okay, so what you need to understand, okay, before I get to Burns, what you need to understand is that this human beings have been thinking about this concept of pleasure for a long time before Burns ever thought about it. Okay, thousands of years before Burns thought about it, human beings have been thinking about this idea, and there's essentially always been a sort of disagreement, if you like. Okay, so here's the basic disagreement. Okay, so essentially, there's one camp of people, of philosophers, thinkers, and normally this would be, I'd say, the many of the religious thinkers and schools, if you like, positions would be in this camp. Okay, this camp, and maybe the Stoics as well might be in this camp. I'm not sure, but in any case, the this camp of people are and thinkers are those who essentially say that pleasure in and of itself is like, there's two positions. One is pleasure in and of itself is like a waste of time, and if you get it, fine, but you shouldn't focus on it. Rather, you should just, instead of focusing on trying to attain pleasure and different things, enjoying yourself, you should strictly focus just on virtue. Strictly focus just on improving your character and improving your behavior, your mind, your understanding of philosophy, your wisdom, your ability to handle difficulty, your virtue, your commitment to truth, courage, justice, temperance, blah blah blah, all that. So this would be the one camp. Your commitment, if you're taking the religious or spiritual, and your commitment to God, to following God's commandments, to praying, to fasting, to abstaining, and some would. So that would be the initial position. That pleasure is just, it's pointless. There's no point trying to seek it. If you get it, fine. It's like okay, acceptable. But you shouldn't seek it. In other words, you should try and seek things which would be considered higher than pleasure, like things like prayer and fasting and doing charitable works and all that. Yeah, things which are higher than pleasure, like just immediate pleasure, enjoying yourself, having fun. Okay, so there's one. Now in the same camp, which is like the religious and so on. I think the Stoics also would be in this. In the same camp, you also would have people, okay, who would take this further and say not only is pleasure something that you shouldn't aim at, and if you get it, it's okay. It's not like a bad thing. But they would take this further, okay, and that they would say that pleasure in and of itself is actually a bad thing. That it's actually a bad thing, and you should do your best to abstain from it because pleasure is it's a function of the body, the worldly, earthly, lowly, animalistic body, and it is an antithesis. It is the opposite of the soul the divine soul, if you're looking at it from the religious or spiritual perspective, or from the rational intellect, the divine intellect, if you mind looking at it from the more philosophical perspective. In any case, both of them would say, this camp, these people, these would be the people who would say call themselves like ascetics and stuff. They'd cut themselves off from all these type of things, and they might isolate in the desert, or they might isolate themselves away from this, or they might be completely against engaging in it at all. These people would be anti-pleasure, huh? They'd be anti it. This would be like more, literalist, religious groups. Um, the more literalist religious groups would be like this. The more sort of hyper conservative religious groups would be like this, and also the more sort of like I said, more stoic. And I'm not exactly sure if the Stoics are against pleasure. I don't know yet, but I think they are not in favor of it at least. In any case, this camp basically, they say don't try and get pleasure yet because it's a waste of time. You're just going to distract yourself from what you should be doing, and it's actually a bad thing yet. So if you eat fancy food, if you engage, and this would be common yet, like you can think about it. If you engage, for example, in intimacy, uh, outside of certain specific tight conditions like marriage, if you drink, if you um if you dance, if you watch films, and it can go, as to very extreme places. Um, if you talk to the opposite sex in a way which is not businesslike, if you look at the opposite sex, it can go, very, very far, depending on, which group or whatever is sort of doing the outlining of this. Then not only are you doing something which is a waste of time, but you're actually committing a sort of sin. You're committing a sin. So you're doing something wrong. Okay, you're doing something wrong, and you're doing something which is essentially like criminal. You're doing something criminal against your own soul. You're committing a spiritual crime. So this camp has always existed, by the way. It's not something new, but this camp has always existed. Look through history at the people who call themselves ascetics, who call themselves, who cut themselves off from society, who preach against having fun, who talk about pure 100% commitment to prayer and all that stuff, who talk about the body as being, lowly or animalistic or anti-body, who are anti-earth, who see the world as being a fallen place or a dark place or a cursed place, and so on. So this camp has always existed. Yet you can call them like the anti-pleasure camp, the no fun camp. The camp that gets mad when you have a party. Yeah, that's these guys. The ones they don't get no. That's these guys. All right. Okay, that's one side. Yeah. Okay, now on the other side, on the other side, You would have people like the Epicureans, now like people like Epicurus and other people who, excuse me, I think maybe Aristotle might fall into this camp too. I'm not exactly sure. I need to continue. I've just started his Ethics. Yeah, I need to continue reading it. But um, you have other people. You call these maybe the moderates, or it's going to be a mixture of people. Yeah, these would be like the moderate kind of religious people, and the more spiritual, religious or just purely spiritual kind of people. And also the philosophers who don't see the body in and of itself as negative, but actually see the body as like something positive, and who see that um either that there is no next life, or that this life in and of itself should be taken seriously, and that you should try to live a good life, not just spiritually, but like actually experientially. They talk a lot about the senses, and trying to understand the world through your senses and through experiences. Okay, so these people are completely opposite to the first kind, in that they would say that the medium position from these people would be something like pleasure is actually something good, and pain is actually something bad. Whereas in the other camp, they would say pain is actually something good, because if you suffer with pain, you get your sins washed away from you. And to bear pain, if you don't take the sin route, but the stoic route, to bear pain with strength is sort of a sign of your virtue and your inner power, to bear pain. The more pain and suffering you have, if you're born a slave but you bear it with courage and with fortitude and without complaint, you're better than the emperor. Yeah, you're like, so it'd be good to be born in that state. Um, so these people in the other camp, the pro pleasure camp, if you like, they're not like this. They think pain itself is the worst, depending on which philosopher, whatever you talk about. They in itself see pain as being something bad. They in itself see pain as being something bad. Epicurus would see pain as being the most bad thing, the biggest evil. Pain itself is the biggest evil. It's funny, people don't often talk about this in philosophy, right? And we should do what we can to try and lessen pain. Pain itself is not good. I think there's a very nice quote. Pain exists, but we don't have to experience it. We should do what we can to not experience it. It exists, but we should do our best to try and lessen it if we can. Something like that, yeah. In any case, the moderate position with these guys would be something like reduce pain as much as you can. So try and reduce the pain in your life. If you can have a variation of food in your life, and that doesn't, hurt you in any way, you should do that, because it will make your life more colorful, more rich. If you can enjoy yourself, depending on obviously if you're talking spiritual, religious, whatever. If if you can enjoy yourself, maybe by dating, but without doing something that would damage you again, then that would be good. If you can have fun with your friends, if you can go and have experiences which are fun to you and fulfill you in some way, they bring more joy to your life. If you can have hobbies and do fun things that you would, get enjoyment without hurting you. Because remember, the point is to avoid pain. So the caveat with doing all these things, these pleasure things, like for example, if you're gonna drink, or if you're gonna, date and be intimate before marriage or whatever, the point is it can't cause pain, because pain is the ultimate bad. So you'd have to do it in a way which is like avoids hurting yourself or hurting someone else in some way. You'd have to be like you'd have to be temperate is the word. In other words, you do enough to uh, increase the joy in your life and to have fun, but not so much that it turns into something bad, basically. Not like Tam O'Shanter is drinking, and his drinking's out of control, but like enough. And obviously, I'm not encouraging you to drink. Personally, I would say you should avoid it. Excuse me, because drinking in and of itself, if you can avoid it, your life will be better. Um, so too with drugs. If you can avoid it, your life will be better. But in any case, I'm just presenting to you the philosophical sort of background, philosophical background to this. So that would be the majority of this camp, I would say. They'd say, and this is kind of how we in our modern world, I think we kind of see things this way. Most of us see things this way. That you should try and have fun, you know, where you can, in a way that doesn't hurt you or hurt other people. You should try and, you know, add some color to your life. We don't all follow this, me myself. As much as I think this is a good idea, I'm probably more in the first camp of being just because I'm a pretty much a workaholic and I've got big, big dreams and ambitions and things. So for me, I don't really have that much fun, but I do see the benefit in it, and I don't think fun's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. But in any case, there's another position, okay, which is the more extreme end of this pleasure camp. Okay, and I'm setting this up because this is the background to what do you call it? What he's about to talk about here. This is the background to the whole philosophical center of this poem. So, so the more extreme version of this pleasure camp, okay, is the camp that basically says that pleasure is the only good in life. Pleasure is the only good, and that your that there is no meaning to life, that there is no deeper sort of um there is no deeper element, there is no deeper perspective, that we are just body. So these are like the mirror opposite to the extremists in the other camp who say that we are just soul and the body is like a burden, that the body is like an evil. These people would say that we are just body. There is no soul. There is no, you know, mind, divine mind. There is no divinity itself. We are just animals, essentially, or that we are just body, and that our only purpose in life is to have fun and to engage in pure pleasure as much as we can before we die. Yeah, because when we die, that's it. The curtain closes, and there's nothing else to the story. Everything fade to black, and that's it. The story's over. So drink as much as you can, eat as much as you can, to go and, you know, sleep with as many women as you can. Just basically do as much as you can, take as much drugs as you can. And there are people who live this way. Tam O'Shanter might be an example of that in terms of drinking. There are people who live this way, and essentially where this leads to is sort of like an empty existence. It's like the same emptiness that I'd say the religious extremist feels, except he feels emptiness because he has zero fun or pleasure in his life. This individual feels emptiness because he has zero spirituality or zero meaning, fulfillment, anything deep, which feeds his soul in his life. So both of them, I'd say, are incorrect. Okay, anyway, there's your backdrop. Okay, there's your backdrop to the philosophical center of this poem. And if you notice, now we can look at the poet's take. I mean, now we can look at Barnes's take. So when when Tam is in the place drinking, engaging in pleasure, essentially, he's drinking. The storm outside does not bother him. Okay, the storm outside does not bother him, meaning that the pleasure, now you can see the connection, the pleasure has removed his pain. The pleasure has removed the pain of the storm. It's removed his fear. It's removed his anxiety. He's just having a good time. So, in terms of the now enlightenment thinking, which is what Barnes is part of, enlightenment, I would say that the enlightenment thinking is probably the moderate approach of the on the pleasure side. Essentially, it's the idea that you should have fun, but you shouldn't go to extremes. Basically, that's like if you sum up. So Tam is drinking, and he feels no fear. He has no, he's not scared, but he is enjoying himself, and he doesn't hear the storm outside. The storm doesn't affect him because he is engaging in something fun, pleasurable. Okay, so it's a good. But then the poet goes on to say, but pleasures are like poppies spread. You seize the flower, its bloom is shed, or like the snow falls in the river, a moment white then melts forever. Or like the borealis, meaning the northern lights, that flat year you can point their place, you can't get your finger on them. Or like the rainbow's lovely form, evanishing amid the storm. Nay man can tell the time or tide the hour approaches that Tam must write. So the speaker goes on to say, okay, that pleasure is something which is fleeting, okay, and that it's only very, um, it's like a flash, and then it's gone. That's pleasure. So The speaker's perspective on this, as I said before, is that it's pleasure is a good thing. It's fun. You can engage in it. Maybe you should engage in it to some extent, but you should recognize that in and of itself, it is only something which lasts a little bit of time and then it's gone. So chasing it like Tam does, drinking every day, chasing, is not a good thing. Is not a good thing. So you should be moderate. So he would fall more in the camp, I would say, like I said, of the moderate kind of thinking about it, which is kind of I think the smart thing to do. You want to have fun, but you don't want to chase it because in and of itself, chasing pleasure is like chasing. You eat a steak and you feel good for an hour, and then or two, and then you're hungry again. And then if you just try and keep eating steak, eventually it just it's empty. There's nothing. What you're not gonna feel satisfied in a real deep way. Okay.